Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Dreambuildrs podcast. I am really looking forward to this super inspiring conversation where we're going to talk about why success is not a spectator sport and how you can develop the mindset, create the game plan, shape the strategies, and how you can take charge in times of change and create success on your own terms. And of course, I've invited a very special guest who knows everything about that. And I can't wait to introduce you to him, my friend Charles Marcus. Now, from Melbourne to Mexico City, Islamabad to Istanbul, San Francisco to Singapore, Charles Marcus has come a very long way, guys. He grew up in the UK with a severe stuttering disability. He was laughed at, ridiculed, voted in his high school class as the student most likely not to succeed. Today, he's a world-renowned and much sought-after global keynote speaker, a best-selling author, and masterclass presenter, having spoken in 57 countries, spanning 6 continents, to audiences of over 1 million people. Charles has been consistently ranked in the top 60 motivational speakers in the world since 2015. So Charles, I'm delighted to have you here.
Same here, Jochem. It's a pleasure to be with you and your viewers all over the world.
Thank you, man. So we were just talking before we started about you moving into a new house, getting new energies and so on. And, you know, I really, really like that. And it's good to know that, you know, after these COVID times, you know, where the event business and the speaking business kind of stopped, that we're now slowly getting back in place, right? So that's good news for all of us. And you just mentioned that you're gonna go to a new country, I guess Portugal, right? So actually it's now 58 countries that you're going to speak.
Yeah, it'll be 58 countries soon. And still counting. By the end of this year, I'm hoping, anticipating, if the world sort of continues to open as it's supposed to, I'll get to about 70 countries, hopefully.
Yeah, you still have that. Is that like a target that you have?
I have a target of 100.
Oh, wow. So then you still have a lot to speak.
I've got a lot. Well, I'm going to include, I think, the ones I go with my wife for visits as well now.
Well, Charles, you know, take us back in time a little bit. I would love to know how that, with all respect, how that stuttering disability really affected you when you were young, and also who you have become as a result, you know, because of that. I think it would be good to share that with our listeners.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been quite a journey over the years. And the long story short, I guess, is if I want to take sort of everybody back, it started when I was 4.5 years of age. And I presume I was a normal kid and, you know, things what I can remember. I can't remember a lot. And I guess the long story short-wise is that my parents took me out into this forest for a day of pleasure and enjoying ourselves. And halfway through the day, I guess my mother thought I was with my father thought I was with my mum, and me as an inquisitive 4-year-old, I had run off into this forest, and a big forest, and basically nobody could find me about 14 hours.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
Police, you know, and I'm talking of the early 1960s in the north of England. It wasn't sophisticated with cell phones and, you know, and sort of GPSs. And I guess through that shock and trauma, sort of over a period of a few days, a few weeks, I guess my parents had noticed a hesitation in me, I guess a scary thing, and that developed very quickly into a very severe, as we call it in England, stammering. In North America, it would be stuttering. And that basically, Jochem, stayed with me for 25, 30 years. It never defined me, but it certainly affected my life in many ways. And I'm not here to tell you or your viewers I'm the only one with, shtick and woes. I mean, everybody has a story. Everybody has the challenges. However, for me, it was a great challenge. I have to say, though, if I'm sitting here and being very honest with you, for many years I portrayed myself as a victim instead of the victor I wanted to be. So I felt sorry for myself. I blamed people, was not a nice individual, very angry. And eventually I sort of took responsibility. And it doesn't matter when you take responsibility in your life, as long as you do at some stage. And when I took responsibility, seek help and support, and we all need help and support. And then over a period of time, when I was able to get my speech together, you never cure stammering. All you can do is control it. It's a formidable foe. And finally, in 1986, I was able to get my life together, and I've never looked back.
Love it. Love it. You know what I love about your story? I think that's kind of the key outtake for me, is like that you say, like, you need to take responsibility. And what I admire in that story of you, Charles, is that you kind of turned let's say a weakness into a strength, and it's now a superpower, right? Your voice. You're inspiring people all over the world. You're leaving a positive mark. And I find that super inspiring. And can you perhaps share what was the kind of earliest specific memory of you wanting to become a public speaker? So kind of like, how did you find your calling, even though you know it was like difficult for you at that point in time?
So that's a great question. You know, I'd love to share with you this great vision I had, but frankly, I never even knew there was a profession called speaking. It just sort of, so again, I'll just have the backstory a bit, if I may. So when I got my speech together in 1986, I was in business. And in the retail, I had shops, I had actually hair salons, I had quite a lot of things. Although my life was good financially, sort of internally, it was not good. So after I got my speech together, I decided my mother and father had split up years ago, and my mother had moved to Canada. So I always had a place in Canada. I went to Canada, I came, to England. So I decided to return out to Canada to start a new life, sold my businesses, and I went into sales. As I was able to speak finally, it was like, it was great. And I was very fortunate. I did very well in sales. So after about 6 years in sales, I got the job in the company I was with as a national educator to do the training. So I wanted to really hone my skills. I did my research, and I'm sure you're aware of it, as your readers are. I joined a wonderful organization called Toastmasters. And amazing. I chose a really good club. I realized that not all clubs are the same. Some are very sophisticated, some are not organized. So I chose a really good club. And after about a year, and some of the older members, I was happy. I'm in sales, was a manager, was traveling all over North America, and they said, "You have potential, Charles Marcus. Have you ever thought of joining the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers?" I said, "What the heck is that?" So I went to a few meetings, and, it was interesting. I was still in my job in sales. And this was about 1994. so the internet, was just in its infancy. And I used to go to self-help clubs and high schools, and just share my story. I didn't even have a clue what speaking was. So there used to be a gentleman who used to be a chief columnist in the Toronto Star, huge paper. In those days, everybody read papers. And he used to do a column on Sundays. It was called Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Things. Somehow he heard about my story, wanted to do a feature on me, a whole page. He came to my house with my wife. We had a young son at the time. And I think that story made me much better than I was. And had he got phone calls and letters? Who is this guy? And I guess that started off a sort of my journey into professional speaking. However, I never went into full-time speaking until maybe 3 years later, and my wife could see my passion. She knows I was good at the sales, and she says, Charles, if you hand in your notice, I'll give you 1.5 years, and if you make it in the speaking, that's great, and if you don't, you're going to have to go back into sales. And I guess the rest is history.
She was right. But in the end, you made it. So that's really cool.
Well, I would say, and I said to you earlier in our private conversation, I think the one word I would never use in anything is make it or complacency. I think we always have to, I wake up every morning, and for better or worse, I always try to do 1 or 2 things that challenges me, that makes me feel uncomfortable, that gets me out of my comfort zone. Never sit on my laurels. Always try to be the best you can be, and never believe all the hype that people say about you. Stay grounded, stay focused, stay humble, and try to be a good human being every day.
You do that every day? That's a great hack.
Well,
so every
not
day.
Every day. Not every. I try. Listen, I'm. All of us are. But I try. Really make an effort, and especially as I'm getting sort of older and things, and I'm trying out to think of my family and my friends as well as my work. I'm trying to find, as I told you earlier, I'm trying to find the balance out between work, family, friends. All has to balance. It's not with me now, work. I want to have that full spectrum of living. As life, my friend, can be so short and fragile, and we never know what's going to happen. Seize the day, seize the moment.
Thank you for sharing that, Charles. I find it very important that we should find balance in all aspects of our life, not just business or work, but also in our health, right? In relationships with family and friends, or the community that you're serving. I think that's also super important, and that we should stay energized every day in the complete picture, mentally, physically, and energetically, of course. So thanks for sharing that. Now, what I found interesting from your story before, and the way that you became a speaker, is that, which I believe is a great point, is that you also joined Toastmasters. I myself joined Toastmasters here in Porto as well, where I live right now.
Oh, really? Yeah.
For some time.
Fabulous organization.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So that really helped me as well to kind of know how to communicate, not necessarily only do public speaking, but also know how to give feedback and so on. There's a lot of different things. So that's, I think, a great way to learn how to communicate. So that's actually a great tip for other people as well. Now, you are a sought-after global keynote speaker right now. You have built your journey, right? And you're still building your journey. Like, what are 3 things you believe that can really help people create success on their own terms, like what you have seen in your life so far. So what are 3 things that can really help people to create success on their own terms?
That's a good question, and there's so many things. I think
it's only 3 for now.
I know. I think the
3 most
thing,
important to you.
3 things. If you want me to narrow it, I think whatever you do, the first thing you have to do is have passion. I really think passion, enthusiasm is contagious. Passion sells. I think if you speak to anybody who knows me, and they may not always like me or agree with me or have heard me speak, and may not hit it off. However, I think there's one thing I'll say humbly, if somebody would say about me, Charles is passionate. He's a passionate guy, and it shows. So I think you've got to be passionate. Secondly, I think you have to have a strong work ethic. I think whatever you do is a strong, because there's nothing easy and there's no overnight success, and you've got to be able to work your butt off. So you've got to have a strong work ethic. And thirdly, I think, as far as from my personal experience, is you have to accept failure and rejection along the way. You got to be thick-skinned, because as far as my jobs, as an entrepreneur, as a sales guy, as a manager, in speaking, there's a lot of rejection, a lot of failure, a lot of people messing you around, BS, and you've got to be able to handle it. So those 3 things, I think you've got to be passionate, a strong work ethic, and you've got to be able to handle the difficult times as well as the bad times, but always with a positive mind and outlook.
Love that, Charles. I think they're very important. I think enthusiasm and strong work ethic are very clear for me. Can you perhaps share an example of how you dealt with failure and rejection along your journey as well, to give people kind of an impression of how you dealt with it and what they can do as well to deal with that?
So when I was in sales, I worked for a company, and the gentleman who owned it, I'll call him Mr. S. And he was a guy from Sicily, came out to the States with his family, had no formal education, but he was a multi-millionaire, a smart guy. And he taught me many things. He took me under his wing, him and his wife, in sales. I thought I was good at sales. I didn't know squat at first, but he took me under his wing. And the one thing I learned from him, many things, but one thing I learned from him is never take rejection personally. It's only business. It's not personal. Now, that may sound a very simple thing, but I saw him in action. Some people may say it's phony, switching off and switching off, but he taught me not to take rejection personally. Fear, Jochem, is a reaction, but courage is a decision. So you've got to be really courageous. You've got to believe in yourself. You've got to be, as I said earlier, thick-skinned. And I mean, when I used to get rejected, I have this a system I use in my talks on sales, and I go, failure, 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 success. Failure, 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 success. And you've got to be able to realize not everybody's going to like you, and not everybody's going to buy from you, and you've just got to be have all the, to speak about value and benefits and build relationships, yada, yada, yada. But you have to be prepared to accept failure and rejection. And I think in a crazy way, growing up stuttering and being rejected and laughed at and humiliated as I got older helped me, actually, as I'm thinking, what is the worst that can happen? I've been through all this, and I don't say it doesn't affect you. Of course it affects you, but I never let it affect me so much. I always believed, and I moved on to the next person, if that makes sense.
That certainly lowered the barrier for you maybe a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, and you said it also with my speech, I think that all that stuff I went through, and again, I'm not the only one, everybody goes through stuff. I think it made me thick-skinned, and I think also it made me grateful. It made me sort of very appreciative every day of when I woke up and I could speak, I could do simple things, could answer the phone, could speak to somebody, could order in a restaurant, very simple things. I think it made me really grateful, and it made me also, as I said, out to think, what's the worst that can happen? Somebody rejects me, so what? It's not rejecting me, it's rejecting the product, or maybe the time isn't right. Move on to the next person. Otherwise, it's going to really eat you up. And you know that rejection is one of the worst things that people can't take rejection. It's, they find it very difficult.
Of course, because people like to be seen and understood and accepted, right, for who they are. But as you say, rejection is not personally. You should take it on a business perspective. So I think that's a great way to look at it. If we're talking about creating your own success, and you just told the story of Mr. S, who gave you kind of perhaps very good advice, what is the worst advice that you have ever been given in creating your own success?
The worst advice. I think the worst advice is not being genuine or authentic, and in sales, trying out to deceive people or to sell people stuff they don't want. Out to be a person. I always say I would rather be defeated on principle than win through lies and deceit. So I think these people have told me to not be honest, out to look at the numbers, to lie to people, deceive them, and that's not who I am, Jochem. So if you're asking me one thing, there's many things, I would say that stands out in my mind.
I think that's a great life principle, to be authentic and genuine, right? I think that's also...
I think to me, so I read on LinkedIn, and I read a lot. I do a lot of research, and I read about these new gurus, supposedly in sales, like the young ones who talk about, oh, you don't need to build relationships, and listen. Everybody is entitled to their opinion. When I talk to you today humbly, I'm just sharing my opinion. My life success, so whatever you want to call success, has been built on building relationships with people. I say if people like you, they may trust you. But if they respect you, if they believe in you, if you build a proper relationship with them, they will do business with you. And I will take that to my grave. I believe relationships are everything.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think exactly that point, relationships, is very important also in creating the success that you want eventually, right? We haven't been talking about it yet, but getting the right people around you, the people that you want to work with, has also something that has been critical for my own success ever since I started being an entrepreneur. So has been super, super critical. So thank you for sharing that, Charles.
Thank you. And also, I think for your audience who are entrepreneurs and in business, I think patience is a real virtue as well. And another thing, I think one of the things I learned in England, it's like an English psyche thing, is attention to detail. I'm very attention to detail. It drives my wife absolutely crazy. But for me, I mean, I stay in touch with people. It sounds crazy, but so many people who don't stay in touch with people. If somebody says to me, phone me in a month and we make a date, and I will call them, and they seem surprised that I have called, because most people give up, it seems. So I think attention to detail, I think patience, I think, again, speaking about value, being in it out for the long haul, having the customer's best interest at heart instead of your interest. As you know, Jochem, I think the consumer today is very savvy. They're very savvy, and they can smell a rat just like that.
So true. All right. So I want to move on to something that we've all been living through in the last couple of years, and that's like massive change, not only through COVID, but all of the things that are happening now in the world. You touched upon relationships and how important it is to have the right relationships around you, and to keep maintaining those relationships as well. Super important. I think that, with COVID, it was difficult sometimes to maintain relationships, as suddenly everything on the physical plane removed, and we had to make relationships online. But so I think it's a great message that you're giving there, that we can still online keep up as well the relationships with people in whatever form. But I would want to ask you something about that change. We're gonna expect much more change in the future, and my question to you is, how can we navigate through change? Is there something like a game plan that we can stick to?
So again, that's a super question. And, I'm not here to minimize change, because change is very difficult. But I think it's how you see it. I really think you talked earlier about the mindset. Do you see change as a catastrophe, or do you see it as a catalyst? Do you see it as a roadblock, or do you see it as an opportunity? So personally, as a professional speaker, as an entrepreneur, of course, the last few years have been absolutely terrible, and all of us have had to adapt. I've had to adapt to virtual stuff. It's not my forum. However, you do what you have to do to pay the bills. But contrary to public opinion, I believe now, as the world seems to be moving away and slowly opening up, I see great opportunities. I see fantastic opportunities. I think the problem for a lot of people is they see change as more threatening than challenging. They see it as the destroyer of the comfortable and the familiar rather than new and exciting. And there's a lot of new, exciting stuff. 3 things, Jochem, I know about change. If we resist change, 100% we fail. If we try to fight it, we're going to fail. Secondly, if we accept it, we survive status quo. But for those of us who run towards the change, who are bold, who are courageous, who are visionary, I think we will not only survive, we will thrive. I think I always say, when you think about the pain of staying the same rather than the pain of changing more, that is when you will take the steps to change. It's not easy. You just take slow steps. If you want to go back to my speech when I decided to change, again, slow steps, failure, failure, failure. I think the first thing is, though, for your viewers, you have to have a roadmap of success. And I think your mindset has to move away out from change is bad, it's threatening, it's not good. Change is an evolution of life. It's going to happen every day. Change, disruption, it's not easy, my friend, but we have to be able to nip it in the bud, find those few ways, find that roadmap, that purpose, that passion, that plan, that process, step by step. I'm a step-by-step guy. Support, as you said, health as support, taking stock of the situation, and I believe change can be a good thing instead of a negative, if that makes sense.
100%, Charles, 100%. You know, I was just reflecting on it. Do you see it as a roadblock or an opportunity when change comes? And definitely, yes, an opportunity. You know, I remember when COVID started 2 years ago, I had my business up and running for about 1 year and a month.
Oh my goodness, really?
So you know, I have my event business and service business and so on. So everything I did was physical. And so physical workshops, physical events. So when COVID hit, I was like, yeah, definitely set for about a week or so. I was like, yeah, what am I going to do now? But the opportunity for me was to do everything online. And I had never thought about that before. So I started implementing online video courses. I created my own online video course about discovering your life purpose. And that was a huge opportunity for me as well to, you know, engage in other activities and develop new skills. I started my podcast, and that's one of the reasons why I'm talking to you today.
Absolutely.
So, you know, do you see it as a roadblock or an opportunity? I think you should always see it as an opportunity. So very well said.
And something else as well, I think you should always, and you mentioned this, is to seek help. I have never been afraid out to invest in people, out to coach me. Always, I've seen it as an investment instead of an expense, out to be a better speaker, a better communicator. I know when COVID hit and things, so with me, I'm a live presenter. I'm a keynote speaker. I move around a lot. I go in the audience. And, you know, when I first thought of Zoom, I was terrified, I must admit. So I'm not ashamed to say I reached out to people. I paid out for help and advice. And then slowly I listened to people, and, you know, I learned to adapt to the virtual world. Now I'm slowly starting to speak, obviously, in live events, and there's nothing, I mean, it's fantastic, but I was prepared out to take that sort of opportunity to learn from other people, to hopefully out to present. And I always say, we talked a bit about sort of communication, and I think communication skills also, and you asked me before about, 3 things I learned. So, and I think as a stutterer, and you're always a stutterer, I think an advantage of stuttering is I learned how to be a very good listener, as I wasn't able to speak very well. Most people are great talkers, but how many people are great listeners, Jochem? I always say, if you want to impress people, talk. If you want to influence people, listen. Speaking is a sense, listening is by understanding. So how you communicate with people is you ask great questions and you shut up and listen. Because I believe questions are more important than answers.
I love that. That's exactly how I think as well. So, you 100% what you said right there. And, in respect of time, Charles, I would love to ask you, one final question, because I'm a listener as well. So
good for you, good.
So, when you look back at your life, what has been for you the most important factor to really start living your dreams?
Ooh, so many different phases. I think for me is the most important sort of factor is when I met my wife, Mary, about 28 years ago. I waited a long time out to marry to find the right person. She has been an incredible catalyst, a supporter, allowed me to live, to at least go out and try out to achieve my dreams. And I have to say, I don't think I would be where I am today if I wouldn't have had Mary in my life.
Oh, wow. She should be listening to this podcast right now.
It's true. I have to speak out from my heart. I have to tell you the truth. I mean, there's many people who have helped me, many wonderful people over the years. However, I think she has been not only a supporter, has been my partner, mother to my kids, and we have a truer life and work, a whole partnership. And now we move forward to another stage of our careers together and lives, and that's exciting as well.
Well, that's great. Great to hear that you guys have such a good relationship. And I think you're making her day when she listens back to this conversation.
Well, it's true. I have to give credit for where it's due, my friend.
Yeah. Now, Charles, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I really appreciate it in making this happen, to share all your insights, to share your story as well.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me, and I hope your viewers are able to get some value out of my stuff today. It was a real pleasure. Thank you, Jochem. Thank you very much.
Charles, before you go, please share with us what are the best places that people can find you and your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best thing is if you go to my website, is www.cmarcus.com. So C for my first initial, CMARCUS.com. And if you go onto the website and you see the links for Facebook, for Instagram, for Twitter, LinkedIn, out for WhatsApp, and anybody who's got a question for me, if you go on the website, out to the contact, and you send me an email, I will be more than happy out to answer a question.
Awesome, guys. So please do go to his website, the website of Charles, cmarcus.com, where you can, of course, also check out his inspiring work, his books, all of the social media
YouTube
handles. So please go there, guys. And Charles, I really appreciated this, for talking to you in this 45 minutes that we had. And of course, I wish you the best of luck coming time, personally, also professionally. And I really hope to catch up soon.
Fabulous. Thanks, my friend. All the best, and bye-bye to everybody.
Bye-bye.